We've got a billionaire Prime Minister and a billionaire Prime Minister, both of whose families have used schemes to avoid millions of pounds of tax, smearing a working-class woman. Mr. Speaker, we live in probably a more volatile world than we've lived in for many decades. It is absolutely crucial.
But in the budget, which was probably the toughest, I'm really pleased that we were able to put so much money into the National Health Service.
The House of Commons descended into a war zone today as Keir Starmer faced a relentless verbal assault during Prime Minister's questions, a session that exposed the deepening fractures within Labour and ignited what many are calling the fiercest confrontation of the year. The fury was immediate. The tension had been brewing for weeks, but today it detonated like political dynamite. What started as a routine questioning spiraled into a no-holds-barred takedown of Starmer's credibility, integrity, and leadership. Every sentence aimed at him hit like a hammer, merciless, calculated, and devastating. From the moment he stood up, Starmer looked tense. Not just the usual wear and tear of party politics, but something deeper, something unnerving. He knew what was coming. Across the aisle, Tory MPs were already sharpening their blades, but it wasn't just the opposition ready to pounce. Members of his own party were beginning to shift uncomfortably, some refusing eye contact, others bracing themselves for the fallout. And then it began. The Prime Minister, his voice steady but venom-laced, launched the first strike. How can the right honourable gentleman look this chamber in the eye when he's failed to come clean about the real state of Labour's policy promises? The silence that followed was deafening. Starmer fumbled for a counter-attack, his rehearsed lines now sounding hollow against the accusations being hurled with surgical precision.
Mr. Speaker, I'm privileged to be the proud owner of a copy of the former Prime Minister's new book. It's a rare, unsigned copy.
But in the budget, which was probably the toughest, I'm really pleased that we were able to put so much money into the National Health Service. Oh, it's hard. I mean, governing is hard, and we inherited a lot of problems, an economy that was broken, NHS on its knees, and we've had to pick that up and deal with it.
He stammered about integrity and restoring trust in government, but it only added fuel to the fire. Then came the list. One by one, the Prime Minister recited promises made and promises broken. Energy price freezes that were never funded. Green investment plans quietly gutted. The VAT on private schools that was shouted from the rooftops then suddenly became a complex matter once donor pressure kicked in. Every inconsistency, every backtrack, every politically convenient U-turn was dragged out and displayed like evidence in a courtroom. You said you'd be different. You said no more lies, no more spin, the Prime Minister barked. But all you've done is repackage the same old dishonesty in a slightly shinier box. The government benches erupted in jeers and thunderous applause. Starmer stood frozen. The look in his eyes was one of quiet panic. A man whose carefully curated image of calm and control had been shattered in real time. What made it worse was what happened next. A backbencher from Starmer's own party stood up, not to defend him, but to ask for clarity on one of the very pledges being questioned. It was subtle, almost diplomatic, but in the high-stakes theatre of PMQs, it was a gunshot in the back. A moment that revealed the widening cracks in Labour's unity and the increasing discomfort within Starmer's own ranks. As the Prime Minister continued, there was a brutal rhythm to the attack. You talk of moral authority, but you abandoned your pledges the second they became inconvenient. You talk of fairness, but you pander to special interests. You talk of accountability, but you duck every hard question. The Labour leader's face flushed. There was no righteous anger to defend himself with. No carefully crafted zinger to turn the tide. Just a man being politically disassembled before a packed chamber. Commentators watching from the press gallery were stunned. Even those sympathetic to Starmer admitted he looked weak, cornered, hesitant, unsure of how to defend the very platform he built his leadership campaign on. He came in promising a new kind of politics, one journalist whispered. Now he looks like just another suit saying whatever he thinks people want to hear. As the PMQs session drew on, the opposition leader tried to claw back ground, pivoting to the economy, the NHS, and housing. But each pivot was met with counterpunches. How can he talk about healthcare when his plans don't even cover staffing shortages? How can he talk about growth when he can't even stick to a coherent tax policy? The barrage didn't let up. At one point, a visibly agitated Starmer tried to retake control with a defiant line about Tory failures and working-class struggles. But the Prime Minister struck back immediately, reminding the chamber that Starmer once praised Jeremy Corbyn, only to later disavow him entirely. A man who changes his principles depending on the room he's in isn't a leader, he's an actor. The attack hit hard. Labour MPs shifted uncomfortably, some staring at the floor, and it wasn't just words. The Prime Minister came armed with receipts, quotes, voting records, budget analyses, and even media clips showing Starmer's contradictory positions over the past 3 years. For every accusation of Tory failure, there was a mirror showing Labour's own. Social media exploded, hashtags like Supping Starmer Exposed and Tash PMQs Meltdown began trending within minutes. Clips of Starmer's stuttering responses and the PM's most brutal takedowns circulated like wildfire. Political commentators from both sides described it as a massacre, a car crash, and a total demolition of credibility. Even normally reserved centrist pundits were taken aback. One wrote, "Starmer's brand was built on trust and transparency. Today, that image died a very public death." Another tweeted, "Labour should be miles ahead right now, but with performances like this, they're handing the next election away." By the end of the session, Starmer's team looked shell-shocked. Aides whispered urgently. Advisors avoided eye contact with reporters. The Labour press office released a defensive statement accusing the Prime Minister of cheap theatrics and distorting the facts, but the damage was already done. Outside Parliament, the story spread fast. Interviews with ordinary voters showed the fallout wasn't confined to Westminster. One lifelong Labour supporter said, "He just seems fake. I wanted to believe him, but now, I don't know." Another added, "It's like he's just another politician saying whatever it takes." Meanwhile, Tory backbenchers celebrated the ambush. One gleefully told reporters, "We just ripped the mask off." The public finally saw who he really is. Another Conservative MP, grinning, said, "He looked like a rabbit in the headlights. This was supposed to be his moment, and he blew it." In the hours following the chaos, Labour loyalists scrambled to recover. Surrogates were sent to news channels to spin the performance as measured and focused on policy, but the footage told a different story. There was no polish, no gravitas, just a man under siege, dodging arrows from every direction. The bigger question now is what this means going forward. With a general election looming and public trust hanging by a thread, Starmer faces a nightmare scenario. He needs to unify a fractured party, convince a skeptical electorate, and fend off a rejuvenated Tory campaign, all while weathering the internal mutiny that today's PMQs may have just accelerated. Privately, Labour insiders admit they're worried, not just about the optics, but the substance. "We can't keep running on vibes and vague promises," one MP said. "If we don't tighten up our messaging and stop these constant walkbacks, we're done." And perhaps most damning of all, rumours are already swirling that several shadow cabinet members are reconsidering their roles, with at least one said to be deeply frustrated with the direction of the leadership. The whispers of discontent, once easily dismissed, are now starting to sound like warning bells. The Prime Minister, in contrast, walked out of the chamber triumphant. He didn't just survive today, he dominated it. And with each PMQ session, he's perfected the art of turning Labour's own words and policies against them. It's not just political theatre anymore, it's psychological warfare, and today Starmer lost that battle. As the cameras stopped rolling and the MPs returned to their offices, one thing was clear. This wasn't just another day in Parliament. This was a turning point, a ferocious public reckoning that peeled away the facade and left Keir Starmer standing in the rubble of promises he couldn't defend. Whether he can recover remains to be seen, but one thing's certain: the next time he enters that chamber, every eye will be on him and the knives will already be out.